Let's jump right into this explainer because today we are going to completely dismantle the illusion that looking rich actually equals being rich. We are going to explore exactly why everything changes after you start looking poor. And to really wrap our heads around this massive shift in perspective, we're going to start our story at a totally ordinary red light. So imagine looking at the two drivers stopped at this light. Right up front, you've got Peter. He's drumming the wheel of a leased German sedan, flashing an $1,100 watch, and quietly dragging around a $900 a month car payment. Now, 4 cars back is Laura. She's sipping from a dented thermos in a 2014 Camry with a coffee stain that has literally outlived her last 2 cell phones. You'd instantly assume Peter is the one winning at life, right? But the reality is he's one bad month away from absolute financial collapse. Meanwhile, Laura has just completely opted out of performing wealth to buy herself real, untouchable freedom. Believe it or not, Laura quietly has more money than her own dentist. So how do we get this so incredibly backwards?
Well, let's look at the actual data. The truth is, the entire visual language of wealth is just a lie that we've all agreed to believe. You see, when researchers Stanley and Danko studied actual, verified American millionaires, they fully expected to find, imported cars and custom-tailored suits. But instead, they found this shocking reality. Half of the millionaires they studied had never paid more than $399 for a suit in their entire lives. Never.
And honestly, it gets even more embarrassing for people who are obsessed with flashing status symbols. The median most expensive watch those actual millionaires ever bought? A mere $235. The typical millionaire wears a watch you could literally just grab at a standard department store on a random Tuesday. That guy at the next table over with the $5,000 watch is statistically way more likely to be drowning in debt than the guy in the off-the-rock blazer who quietly owns 3 profitable businesses. Now, you might be thinking, okay, sure, maybe that was true back in the 90s, but modern Experian data proves that the genuinely wealthy still aren't the ones driving the flashy cars. In fact, 61% of households earning over $250,000 a year don't drive luxury brands at all. They drive Hondas, Fords, and Toyotas. Meanwhile, the data shows that households making under $100,000 actually buy more than twice as many luxury vehicles as genuinely high-income households. That shiny badge on the hood, it's not a signal of wealth. It's usually a signal of a massive monthly payment attached to a very normal income.
And this brilliantly illustrates the whole trap. Just look at a 2025 Goldman Sachs survey, which revealed an absolutely incredible statistic. 41% of people making between $300,000 and $500,000 are living paycheck to paycheck. Just think about that for a second. Broke on $400,000 a year. They are basically breaking the middle class at a higher rate than folks earning a fraction of their salary. The people who look the most successful are very often the ones standing closest to the edge.
So why does this happen? Well, the reason high earners go broke is lifestyle creep, which is largely driven by something called the Diderot effect. This is named after a French philosopher from the 1700s who was gifted this beautiful scarlet robe, and the effect explains how one single upgrade kind of ruins everything else. Suddenly, his old desk looked incredibly shabby next to the new robe, so he replaced it. Then he had to replace the chair, and then the art. You get a promotion, you buy a nicer car, and suddenly your apartment feels embarrassing. It quietly resets your definition of normal. And let me tell you, normal is the most expensive thing you'll ever buy.
On top of that, you can never buy your way to lasting satisfaction. It's just impossible because of a psychological trap called hedonic adaptation. Think about it. You buy the expensive thing, you experience a quick spike of joy. But within weeks, your brain just shrugs. That dream kitchen just becomes the regular kitchen. The sports car becomes just the car you drive to work. It forces you to speed up the spending treadmill, shelling out exponentially more money just to stand in the exact same emotional spot.
And nowhere, absolutely nowhere, is this machine more dangerous than at the car dealership. The trap works exactly like this. They hide a terrifying $40,000 price tag by stretching the term out to 84 months. I mean, until the car is literally old enough to be in the 2nd grade. Because cars lose value so incredibly fast, a third of people trading in are now underwater by an average of $7,000. So what do? They roll that negative equity right into a brand new loan. It keeps guys like Peter from our red light trapped in a $900 a month payment for a vehicle he already cannot afford.
This desperate need to keep up appearances has led to the financing of absolutely everything. We are now seeing companies that let you split a fast food burrito into 4 easy payments or put $50 down to finance a Coachella ticket just to stand in a field for a weekend. And most shockingly, 25% of people using Buy Now Pay Later apps are using them to buy basic groceries. Let's be real here. If you have to split your eggs into 4 installments, the problem isn't the groceries. The problem is that massive car payment sitting in your driveway looking expensive. Which brings us to a question that reveals a deeply, frankly, unsettling truth about human nature. Based on a Federal Reserve study of Canadian bankruptcy records, researchers looked at what happens to the people living directly next door to someone who wins the lottery. Now, how on earth could their windfall push you into bankruptcy? The answer is horrifyingly simple. The bigger the prize the winner received, the more the neighbors went bankrupt. When the Joneses suddenly had more, the neighbors didn't try to actually get richer, they just tried to look richer. They went into massive debt buying highly visible things like cars, boats, and motorcycles just to keep up. It completely proves that conspicuous consumption is a bankrupting disease, or the race has absolutely no finish line because there is always going to be someone one lane over in something shinier. But what actually happens if you just opt out? Let's take a look at Laura's path. The math here is almost insultingly simple. If you take a below-average $700 a month car payment, don't spend it, and simply redirect it into a basic index fund, over 30 years, it compounds into somewhere around $850,000 to over $1 million. While Peter gets a permanent ulcer and depreciating sedans, Laura gets a paid-off house and the absolute freedom to say no to a demanding boss. That coffee-stained Camry didn't just buy her a car, it bought her a no. But the absolute cruelest part of this math is the timing. In your 20s and 30s, your savings rate matters vastly more than your investment returns. And if you hesitate, you pay a massive penalty. If you start investing a few hundred a month at age 30, you'll land near $1 million by retirement. But if you wait just 5 years and start at 35, you don't just lose 5 years of contributions. You lose all the lifelong compounding growth on those early dollars, resulting in a staggering $300,000 gap. The dollars in your 20s are your most powerful dollars, and yet we just throw them away to look wealthy. Now, in your 20s, looking poor feels a lot like failing, but look at the actual billionaires. They know the secret. They intentionally look poor by every visual cue we've been trained to read. Warren Buffett, he still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500 and eats $3 McDonald's breakfasts. The founder of IKEA drove the exact same Volvo for 2 decades, bought his clothes at flea markets, and proudly called himself stingy. This isn't an accident, guys. It's the ultimate flex. It all boils down to this really crucial point. Looking rich and being rich are so frequently opposites that the costume is almost a confession. Every single dollar you spend performing wealth drains the exact resources you need to actually build it. Now, we definitely have to complicate the story here a bit, because looking poor on purpose when you actually have money, that's a cheat code. But being poor by circumstance triggers what is known as the brutal poverty premium. The system aggressively punishes people who don't have a choice. While a wealthy buyer might pay 5% interest on a car loan, a subprime buyer gets hit with 16 to 22%. A completely broken system charges a struggling person $1,000 for a $200 television at a rent-to-own store. You literally get penalized financially simply because you look like a risk on a screen. To borrow money cheaply, you basically have to already look like you don't need it. Banks are essentially the one institution that will only lend you an umbrella on a sunny day. The whole machine just runs in reverse at the bottom. The system will even charge you 2.5 times more for identical car insurance based purely on your credit score and your zip code. It proves exactly how incredibly expensive it is to already not have enough. Over a century ago, an economist named Thorstein Veblen coined the phrase conspicuous consumption, meaning the rich buying expensive things just to broadcast that they can. But the really dark flip side of that is the conspicuous poverty tax. Studies show that dressing down in an upscale store gets you quietly ignored or treated poorly, which is sometimes called the pretty woman effect. The poor pay a massive penalty in money, respect, and patience that they literally cannot spare just for showing up. And now we're seeing this exact tension absolutely explode online today. On one hand, we have these incredibly healthy trends like underconsumption, where young people are proudly showing off their 5-year-old sneakers, and loud budgeting, where you openly tell your friends, hey, I'm staying in tonight to save money. Yet, at the exact same time, 43% of Gen Z suffers from money dysmorphia. They feel constantly broke and behind, regardless of what's actually in their bank account, because they're comparing their reality to an engineered, totally fake social media feed where everyone else looks like they already made it. And you want to know the final twist? The wealthy completely saw the backlash against flashy logos coming, so they just changed costumes. Enter quiet luxury. This is a plain, boring sweater with zero logos that just happens to cost $2,000, legible only to other rich people who are in the know. You are now paying a literal fortune specifically so that nobody can tell you paid a fortune. It is the exact same rigged game of status, just with the volume turned way down. Honestly, there is no costume that wins. Ultimately, the only way to actually win the game is to just stop playing. Let's check back in on our two drivers 1 year later. Peter, well, he's trading in that leased sedan, rolling $7,000 of negative equity right into his next nightmare payment, still completely exhausting himself performing for strangers. And Laura? She's still driving that dented Camry, but she is quietly crossing a massive brokerage milestone that Peter will literally never see. Because every dollar you don't spend convincing strangers in a parking lot that you're doing fine is a dollar that's actually making you fine. Laura traded the temporary applause for permanent freedom. Which leaves us with this final question for you. Are you willing to look like less than you are? Are you willing to let strangers underestimate you and finally stop paying the exhausting tax of keeping up appearances? Drive the boring car, wear the cheap watch, embrace the fact that looking poor was never actually the goal. It's just what it looks like from the outside when you finally have absolutely nothing left to prove to anyone. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this changes how you look at wealth forever.